Hey guys, howdy, I hope you are fine. As you seen in the thumbnail, in this video, we are gonna see, what if Naruto permanent end relation with Sakura during CH. On an exam part 2 I request you to check the author of this fanfic, and show some love and support. Name of the story is do check it out. All details in description. And if you want next part of this series, please leave a like and comment 5 blue emoji. Let's get into the video. Also check out Patreon for I have upload Naruto X Daenerys Targaryen L uncensored spicy version, link in description. Sakura dodged left under a gloved fist and then right to avoid what would have been a harsh kick to her side. She tried to move behind her target but he merely whirled around and attempted to backhand her. She quickly moved her head back to get out of range of the harsh attack. Sakura then attempted to land a knee into the stomach of her opponent but missed when he dodged it. Annoyed at how she kept missing, she tried an uppercut to the jaw, leaving her right side wide open for the jab to her abdomen. Once hit she collapsed to the ground, out of breath and very exhausted. Kakashi, I straightened from the crouch he'd gone into to hit her and fished his much hated, loathed book out of his vest. Good, you've gotten better, he told her as he flipped to the last page he'd been reading. It doesn't feel like I've gotten any better, she replied petulantly lifting her head from the ground. I still can't hit you. Stupid freaking Kakashi. Look, I'm all sweaty and gross. Well, I am a chunin and you've really only been training your taijutsu for a month. Kakashi reasoned with her. A groan came from the ground as Sakura let her head drop into the dirt. Anyways, Sasuke, were you watching? Kakashi turned around to face the Uchiha sitting in a tall tree 20 feet from where he and Sakura had been sparring. What did Sakura do wrong? She attacked out of frustration, leaving herself open for a counter. Sasuke replied without much inflection. For the past month, scenes like these had been common. One of them would spar against Kakashi and when they lost, because they always lost, the other one would describe what they did wrong, usually sitting in or around that same tall tree at the edge of the clearing. Exactly. You can't let your emotions get the better of you out on the field. It could mean death for you or your teammates. Kakashi sighed as he looked at the sun. It had started its descent into the horizon. Soon it would be too dark to train unless they went to a lighted ground. Why don't we call it a day, after you tell us what you've been up to with your other training, Sakura? Sakura groaned again as she shuffled sorely to stand up. Well, I've been practicing some D and C rank genjutsu but I've really only gotten a couple of the D ranks and one of the C ranks down. I've learned a lot at the hospital though about treating wounds and illness the manual way and Shiori-san taught me a couple of jutsu. One is just a diagnostic jutsu, for when the patient can't tell you what's wrong with them, and the other is a pain-killing jutsu. It doesn't heal anything but it takes most of the pain away. Sakura was actually very proud of her progress. Her sensei at the hospital, Shiori-san, had told her that she was picking up medical lore much faster than what Shiori had originally anticipated. That's great, Sakura. You're making some real progress there. Kakashi praised his student. He then turned back to Sasuke. Now you should share what you've learned with Sakura, Sasuke. When it was the three of them training together they mostly worked on taijutsu and stealth. Sasuke had jumped down from the tree and had joined his teammates, replying in a bored tone. This was somewhat routine by then. We've been working on my Sharingan, trying to lengthen the time I can use it. I've also been working on a lightning jutsu that sends a shock through the enemy if I touch them. Other than that I've had to sit through a lot of tactical training sessions with Kakashi. Sasuke sighed after the last part. You act as if you don't like the tactical sessions, Sasuke-kun. Kakashi smiled at him mockingly. Sasuke didn't say a word. Kakashi's idea of tactical training seemed to involve playing a lot of mahjong. Sasuke could understand if it were shugi or something, but mahjong? Seriously. Well, that's all for today. I'll see you all tomorrow. We'll do another mission. Kakashi had convinced Kaharu to keep giving them D-ranked missions even without Naruto. At least two of them would have better teamwork. Kakashi was starting to wonder if he really should have sent Naruto off with Jiraiya. Sure, Jiraiya was a Sannin, but this me away from the team could really hurt them in the long run. The fact was though that Jiraiya wanted Naruto and Kakashi wasn't about to say no to his sensei's sensei. He at least hoped Naruto was learning a lot. Standing in the middle of the street 20 feet from Tsunade, Naruto couldn't help but think two things. The first was how the street managed to resemble a ghost town. It was jam-packed less than 20 minutes ago. And how annoyed he was at the blonde Sanin. Beating him with one finger. That was just crazy. And insulting. After minutes of trying a few of his more basic techniques, and of course the cage bunshin, Naruto had come to one startling conclusion: he was utterly screwed. Tsunade had barely moved and she still managed to dodge everything. After being sent flying back by a single finger flick to the head. A freaking finger flick, Naruto had stood up shakily, breathing hard. His only hope lay in using the Rasengan, too bad he couldn't do it completely yet. Still, per 8 times call for desperate measures, and Naruto was precisely that. Naruto started to form the chakra in his hand. He tried to keep it as tightly packed as he could, emulating the one Jiraiya had shown him. He ended up using his other hand to try to give the Rasengan form, but it still fluctuated wildly in his palm. Feeling that there was nothing more he could do and not wanting the whole thing to just blow up in his face, he dashed forwards towards Tsunade. Tsunade stood in shock. It looked as though the boy was attempting the Rasengan. Where had he learned that? Jiraiya, of course. That idiot must have taught the other idiot. As Naruto tried to slam the partially formed Rasengan at her, she deftly reached up and caught his wrist, 5 fingers wrapped it in an iron grip. Naruto smirked a tear in that still moment of peacefulness and said, "I win," before a massive explosion from the failed attack blew the two apart. Tsunade had managed to flip herself mid-air before landing in a crook. 20 feet from her original position. Naruto wasn't as lucky. He'd been blown back straight into a concrete wall. And while the wall hadn't given in, it still hurt immensely to be flung into it. "You little twerp. Just what the hell were you trying to do?" Tsunade screamed at Naruto as the younger blonde gently started to stand. "I win. You bet me you wouldn't have to use more than a single finger to beat me, you just used 5. You have to apologize." Tsunade felt her jaw drop just a little. He was right. She had made that bet and Naruto had won fair and square. She couldn't believe it. She was even losing to Bratz now. Her luck really was shit. Suddenly Tsunade had a great idea, another bet, one she was sure not to lose. "How about another bet?" She cut off from her reluctant apology abruptly. "You win this one. Not only will I apologize, but I'll even give you my greatest treasure." She jerked her thumb at the sparkling crystal secured around her neck. "Tsunade-sama, you can't." Shizune yelled from where she'd been standing next to Jiraiya watching the match, tauntant squealing in her arms. "Don't worry, there's no way I'll lose." Tsunade threw her head back and laughed maniacally. Right. All 3 spectators felt compelled to say. "Why would I want a lousy necklace anyway?" Naruto asked her. "Because this came from one of the founders of Konoha." She told him. "It's worth a lot of money, you know." Fine, whatever. What do I have to do?" Naruto squinted at her. 1 week. I'll give you 1 week to complete the Rasengan. If you can successfully do it by that time, you'll win. If you lose though, you have to admit that you'll never be able to become Hokage." Tsunade smirked at him, confident in her ability to finally not lose. "You're on, Ba-chan." Naruto pointed a finger at the elder lady. "What the hell did you just call me?" 6 days later and Naruto was lying exhausted under a tree. For the first time he was thankful for all the chakra control exercises he'd been given. Even he had to admit that if not for his improved, but still slightly shaky, control, he probably would have blown himself up. He'd managed to complete the last 2 steps the Rasengan, but he couldn't seem to put them together. It always ended up unstable and likely to explode right in his face. Not a fun experience, he'd found out after maybe the 5th time it had happened. After lying on the ground for maybe half an hour to recuperate after his latest try, Naruto forced himself back up. He held out his right hand and quickly started gathering chakra in his palm, using his left hand to keep it compressed. It ended up better than last time, but still too unstable, as he quickly found out when he got blown 5 feet away from the tree he'd been practicing on. "OWW," he moaned. Suddenly a nap seemed like a great idea and he promptly fell asleep in the shade from the trees. Shizune, who had been hiding in a tree watching him, sighed a little. She didn't want Tsunade to lose. But she didn't really want this blonde boy to lose either. She was also worried about Orochimaru. The snake Sanin had said that he'd give Tsunade a week to think over the deal, and the week was up tomorrow. Shizune wondered if Tsunade had arranged the bet to end tomorrow on purpose, or if she'd simply not been thinking about that. Shizune jumped from her hiding spot and walked over to Naruto. She smiled a little as the boy lightly snored. She had to admit that she liked the hyperactive teen, even if he was a little stupid. She took a small package from her person and laid it down next to the sleeping Naruto. It contained a couple of rice balls for when the boy woke up. She turned to leave only to be confronted with Jiraiya standing a few paces away. "Come to spy on my student?" Jiraiya asked her. No, I just wanted to make sure he'd eat something." Shizune shook her head emphatically and pointed towards the food. "Yeah, the idiot hasn't been eating or sleeping too much, he's determined to win that bet." Jiraiya walked over to Naruto and began nudging him in the side with his toe. "Do you think he can?" Shizune asked him. "I think if anyone can, it's this brat right here." Jiraiya then kicked Naruto hard in the side and told him to get back to work. He was out like a light, though. Beyond the point of no return, full of prancing foxes and exploding trees. Naruto woke up staring at an unfamiliar ceiling. Last he remembered he was in the forest. Something was definitely wrong with this picture. After a moment his brain started to work again and he realized. He must have passed out after that last Rasengan and someone brought him here. Sitting up he saw it was a hotel room. He also realized that it was not his and Jiraiya's room, it was nicer, cleaner. And there was a black kimono lying across the back of a wooden chair. Before he could make any further observations, the door opened and the small, black-haired woman who had been with Tsunade entered. She smiled when she saw him up. "Good morning. I'm glad you're awake. Are you hungry?" She sat down the small bundle that had been in her arms. It looked to have been laundry. Yeah. Naruto sighed. Just as his stomach gave a loud grumble. "Hey, very hungry. Alright, well you can eat that then." She pointed to a large covered bowl on the nightstand. Opening it up, Naruto was delighted to find ramen, still warm due to the cover. Awesome. He immediately began slurping it down. After he finished he turned back to Shizune. Hey, you, where's Ba-chan? I got something to show her. My name is Shizune, Naruto-kun. Tsunade-sama went out drinking with Jiraiya last night. Actually I'm getting worried, they haven't returned yet. Shizune began fiddling with the clean laundry, folding it hastily in her anxiety. You don't think Tsunade Ba-chan and Ero Sanin? Both Naruto and Shizune froze, unwanted mental images filling their heads. They quickly began shaking their heads back and forth vigorously to get the images out. Both thinking, EUWWW, and having the sudden need for a bucket. No, I'm sure that didn't happen. Shizune told him. A large crash caused both Naruto and Shizune to whip around. Kunai in both their hands. Shizune's eyes widened when she realized what it was. A poison gas bomb had come through one of the windows that lined the walls behind the futons. Naruto-kun, quick out the window. Don't breathe it. She hurriedly followed her own advice and dropped from the window, a separate one from the one that the bomb was thrown, to the neighboring roof below, Naruto right beside her. Who the hell did that? Naruto said as he coughed a little, trying to make sure none of it got into his lungs. I don't know, Naruto-kun, but we need to be careful, they must still be around here somewhere. Shizune looked sharply at the surrounding area, cursing silently to herself when she realized that there were a lot of potential hiding places. Well, what a surprise to meet you here, Naruto-kun. A figure with silvery gray hair and glasses that concealed his eyes stepped out from behind a chimney. Who are you and what is your business here? Not to mention, how do you know my name, freak? Naruto was greatly confused. This man appeared to be wearing a Hitai-8 but it wasn't one Naruto had ever seen before. My name is Yukushi Kabuto, Naruto-kun. I am here because this is where my master is. Kabuto told him, ignoring the last question. You. Shizune growled at him. Where is Tsunade-sama? What did you do to her? Wah. Shizune-chan, what are you talking about? Naruto swung his head back and forth between Shizune and Kabuto. This guy works for Orochimaru, he's a traitor to Konoha. Shizune spoke fiercely. What? But that's... Naruto's face darkened as he realized just what the implications were. Then you were part of the attack on Konoha. He spoke in a rough voice. Well yes. Kabuto told him simply. But really it's Konoha's own fault for what befell them. They're the ones who couldn't even tell when a spy was among them, Naruto-kun. Don't call me that, you jerk. Naruto snapped at him. Naruto, Shizune. Wheezing Jiraiya stopped beside the other two. We need to. What's going on? He'd just spotted Kabuto. Oh dear, I'm afraid I wasn't expecting the other Sannin to appear. I appear to be out of my league here, oh well. Tsunade should be almost done healing my master by now, so I guess it doesn't matter very much. With that he quickly left, leaving the three behind to stare at the spot he'd been standing in shock. Shizune. What the hell did he mean by that? Jiraiya asked the nervous brunette. Come on, I'll tell you as we search, we have to find Tsunade-sama. Shizune quickly took off across the roofs with Naruto and Jiraiya lagging behind. I'm so glad you decided to see things my way. Orochimaru told his old teammate. Tsunade clenched a fist and averted her eyes. Let's just get this over with. Before we get interrupted. Tsunade bit out. Of course, Tsunade dear. Orochimaru smirked at her, believing things to finally be going his way. Tsunade moved closer and placed her hands over his blackened arms. Chakra began to envelope them and Orochimaru was smiling in triumph. Suddenly the smile faded as he realized something was wrong. What are you? Several kunai came out of the air, headed for Tsunade. She had no other choice than to leap backwards. She executed to avoid them, cursing because she wasn't able to finish her technique. Kabuto quickly appeared beside Orochimaru. I see. So you planned to betray me all along. Don't you care anything for your loved ones? Orochimaru asked her. Dan and Naoki are dead, and nothing can ever bring them back the way they were. Especially not someone as dark and twisted as you. Tsunade spat at him. However, I can stop you here and make sure no one else has to die at your mercy. Fine, if it's a fight you want, it's a fight you'll get, Tsunade. But I wonder. Are you in any condition to fight, what with that pesky phobia of yours? Orochimaru bit down on his own lip and watched as Tsunade froze, her eyes glued on the BL. Ood trailing down his chin from the self-inflicted wound. You won't scare me. Tsunade forced out, dropping into a stiff stance, her eyes still focused on the blood. Oh, is that so? Kabuto. Kabuto shot towards Tsunade, bringing his hand up in an attempt to get at her neck. Tsunade dodged, but barely, and tried to return a punch to his jaw, but the motion was slow and jerky and Kabuto easily avoided it. Spinning, she attempted kick him in the stomach, but the traitor managed to leap backwards at the last second. An exchange of blows continued on for several minutes, neither actually landing a hit on the other. Kabuto's left foot shot out from under him, a loose stone had thrown off his balance. Using the opportunity, Tsunade punched him in the chest. The punch racked Kabuto with coughs, one of them calling up blood to fly out and spatter on Tsunade's face. She screamed and choked, taking several hurried steps backwards before slipping and falling onto her knees. She wiped furiously at her face to get the specks of blood off. In her distraction, she didn't see Kabuto heal himself and start moving towards her. My, that fear of yours is quite debilitating, isn't it? That's too bad. Once you were the greatest healer in the world, and now look at you, a doctor cowering at the sight of blood. Kabuto's voice mocked her, but she'd stopped listening, too concerned with the blood on her skin. He raised a hand and coated it with deadly-looking green chakra, thrusting it towards Tsunade's unprotected neck. Fuden. Suko-ru. A large gust of wind forced Kabuto back, tossing him up into the air and forcing him to twist mid-air in order to land on his feet 30 feet from his original position. Hey Ba-chan, you okay? Naruto ran towards Tsunade with Shizune and Jiraiya right behind him. Looking at her blank expression and twitching fingers, he frowned. Hey, you paying attention? He crouched down and waved his hand back and forth in front of Tsunade's eyes. Hello. Is this a jutsu or something? He turned towards Jiraiya for an answer, but it was Shizune who replied. No. Tsunade-sama is afflicted with hemophobia. Shizune kneeled in front of her mistress and began wiping the blood away with her sleeve. What's that? Naruto asked. It means she's afraid of blood, Naruto. Jiraiya told him. Come on, pay attention. We're on a battlefield, you know. He forced Naruto into a fighting stance by pulling and pushing on Naruto's shoulder. They were now facing Orochimaru, Kabuto back at his side. Well, if it isn't my other teammate, Jiraiya. Orochimaru purred at him, sending shivers down the spines of Jiraiya and Naruto. So that's Orochimaru, he's creepy. Naruto said loudly, causing the snake Sannin to frown. And just who are you? Orochimaru thought the boy looked familiar, but he just couldn't place the blonde. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and I won't let you hurt Ba-chan anymore. He had heard from Shizune Tsunade's story. He even identified with it just a little. He still didn't like what Tsunade had said about Hokages, but he wouldn't stand by and watch her suffer either. Uzumaki. I see, you're the demon brat. Orochimaru smiled sadistically and Naruto thought that somewhere a baby must have just died. Shut up. You have no right to even talk to him. Jiraiya glared at his former teammate. Sure, Naruto was annoying as hell, but he tried hard and he was loyal. And he wasn't going to let someone stand around and insult him. Oh, have we grown attached to the little monster? I never knew you liked kids. Orochimaru mocked. No, we all know who it was that liked kids on our team. Jiraiya sneered back. I don't like what you're insinuating, Jiraiya. Orochimaru replied with a sneer. What? I meant Tsunade. Jiraiya grinned at him. What were you thinking of? Can we just beat him up already? Naruto interrupted, not understanding what they were talking about but not liking the tone either. Sure of yourself, are you? Kabuto asked him. Sure, I could grind those glasses into your face. Naruto snapped back. Well, let's just see about that, Kabuto dashed towards Naruto, launching a bunch of kunai into the air. Unable to dodge due to Shizune and Tsunade still huddled on the ground behind him, Naruto did the first thing that came to mind. Fuden. Suko-ru. The gust of wind scattered the flying weapons and forced Kabuto to take cover from their now random flight. Recovering quickly, Kabuto once again headed for Naruto, who was headed away from Tsunade. A powerful kick forced him to the ground 15 feet away from the others. Now what will you do? Naruto-kun. Kabuto adjusted his glasses, causing light to flash off the lens. This. Naruto grabbed a fistful of paper strips from a pouch on his belt. Coating each of the inch-long strips in chakra, he flung them at Kabuto, directing their movement carefully with yet more chakra. Kabuto raised an eyebrow at him and didn't even bother getting out of the way. Sensing that they were nothing more than normal paper and not exploding tags. Soon, however, he felt sharp, stinging pains all along his arms and face, essentially anywhere he wasn't clothed. What the? He mumbled as he quickly jumped back away from the attack. He quickly burned away the few opposing pieces still hovering in the slight breeze with a kaiden before turning back to the blonde. Very clever. What kind of attack was that? It's actually a chakra control exercise. I surround the paper with my chakra and it becomes sharp as any blade. I can even control them a little since it's still my chakra and I connect a tiny string of more chakra to the paper. Naruto grinned at his successful attack. I see, and what gave you the idea to use such an exercise as an attack? Kabuto asked him, buying for time to heal his wounds. Well, I didn't actually think of it, Sakura-chan did. She said that since I could make the paper sharp enough to cut down trees, then I should be able to cut people too. Once she said that, though I realized I would need a way to control them. I asked her and she told me that thin, invisible strings of chakra could be used to move the paper. It took a couple of weeks to get down though. My control actually sucks a lot. Interesting. Kabuto took off towards Naruto again, surprising the boy who just realized that the wounds inflicted by his attack were gone. What else you got? Kabuto swung a green chakra-covered hand at Naruto, who managed to jump back in the nick of time. Just a couple more tricks. Kage Bunshin. 10 copies of Naruto sprang up and launched themselves at Kabuto. While the Bunshins were blocking Kabuto's field of vision, Naruto began funneling chakra into his hand. Using his left hand, Naruto shaped the chakra in his right into a swirling blue ball. Just as the last Kage Bunshin was puffed out of existence, Naruto finished and ran towards the silver-haired traitor. Jumping up, he managed to catch Kabuto somewhat off guard. Rasengan! He shouted out in a loud war cry. Kabuto just barely managed to avoid taking the hit in the chest, taking it in the shoulder instead. Before he was sent flying, he managed to tap Naruto hard, right above the heart. With his green hand, causing Naruto to crumple, unconscious. Jiraiya, who had been facing off against Orochimaru in the meantime, jumped back away from his opponent when he heard the shout of Rasengan. He couldn't believe it, but it looked like a fully formed Rasengan. The pride faded though when he saw Naruto fall to the ground limp. "Naruto!" he shouted, running as fast as he could to the boy. Picking him up gently, he was relieved to feel a slow but steady heartbeat. He figured that whatever Kabuto had done, the fox was already healing. He carried the boy over to a worried Shizune and a slightly dazed Tsunade. "Twerp," Tsunade said, confused. She hadn't been paying attention to the world around her until this moment. She reached out a shaky hand to touch his face and felt her fingers clench in anger. "What happened?" she asked, swinging her head back and forth between Shizune and Jiraiya. "He was protecting you from Orochimaru and Kabuto. He managed to hit Kabuto in the shoulder with a Rasengan, but Kabuto got him in the chest with some weird attack." Jiraiya told her, disappointment with the female Sannin evident in his voice. "He was fighting for me. Soon," Aide said incredulously, no louder than a whisper. "Why?" "Because, one day he's going to be Hokage, and that's what Hokages do." "Shizune, hurry up and help me with this." Tsunade had finally lurched out of her daze and had begun pulling furiously at the zipper on Naruto's jacket. Eventually it came loose and Shizune cut away the black t-shirt underneath with a kunai. Shoving Shizune out of her way, Tsunade placed her hands right above Naruto's heart and funneled green chakra into his body. "He's going to be okay, right?" Jiraiya asked as he watched Orochimaru and Kabuto warily. "He'll be fine. Some of the veins and arteries above his heart were severed, but the heart wasn't hit and the Nine Tails has already repaired the life-threatening damage," Tsunade told him in her best doctor voice. "Shizune, go stand with Jiraiya. Make sure those two don't come near us while I'm distracted." Shizune nodded sharply before moving next to Jiraiya, Senbon needles held safely between her fingers. Kabuto was holding a hand over his left shoulder. The pain was tremendous and he was having a tough time healing it. The Rasengan had only grazed him really, but it had managed to cut some of the nerves running down his arm, leaving it hanging near useless at his side. What he couldn't understand was why it was so damn hard to heal. "You can't heal it, can you?" Jiraiya called across the field, surprising the sound pair. "What are you talking about?" Orochimaru frowned before sliding his eyes to his right-hand man. He was greatly worried when he saw the still bleeding wound, though it didn't show. "The Rasengan shreds everything, even the cells, makes it hard to regenerate them through cell division and slows down normal healing as well. Even with your ability, that's gonna take a couple of days to be at 100% again." Jiraiya smirked proudly. "You may have knocked the kid unconscious, but he did quite a number on you as well." Kabuto scowled fiercely. His arm wouldn't be much good for this fight. And Orochimaru's were useless as well. They were no match against Jiraiya and Shizune, and that was even counting Tsunade. "Kabuto, forget the others. As long as we kill the boy." "Rock," Himaru murmured so that the opposing three could not hear. "With the boy dead, that will be one less thing to worry about. And I can stick it to those Akatsuki bastards. Haha, what will they do if the Nine Tails is dead?" "Right." Kabuto wasn't quite sure how he was supposed to make close enough to Naruto to kill him, but he wasn't about to tell Orochimaru that. Deciding that distraction would, doubtlessly, be the way to go, Kabuto ran towards the left, away from the boy. Jiraiya followed his movements and leapt after the silver-haired man swiftly. Once the younger judged himself far enough away, he threw down several smoke bombs he had with him before tossing a barrage of kunai through the smoke towards Naruto. Blinded by the smoke that stung his eyes, Jiraiya couldn't block the knives. Shizune, however, was far enough away not to be troubled by the smoke and moved deftly to deflect the various kunai from harming the blond boy. Taking advantage of the distracted pair, Orochimaru ran towards Tsunade and Naruto. Bringing the kusanagi up from his throat, he made to stab Naruto before Tsunade could move, only to find it blocked by a kunai in Tsunade's steady hand. Tsunade, however, was in a bad position. Kneeling on the ground, she could not get up the proper leverage to force the sword away. Rearing back, Orochimaru knocked Tsunade off balance before trying to, once again, impale Naruto's heart. Off balance and desperate, Tsunade threw herself on top of Naruto, gasping as the sword entered just under her lung. Before anything else could happen, Orochimaru was forced back by an extremely pissed-off Jiraiya. Leaving Jiraiya to deal with Orochimaru and Shizune to deal with Kabuto, Tsunade lifted herself up, wincing slightly, and frantically checked Naruto. She sighed in relief when he realized that the sword hadn't pierced the boy even though it had gone completely through her. Now assured, she began to use healing chakra on herself to repair the damage and neutralize the Kusunagi's effects. Shizune was aggravated to find that she was having trouble with Kabuto, even though he could barely use his left arm. He had a number of techniques that didn't require hand seals or his fourth arm, and his taijutsu was much better than her own. Suddenly she lost track of Kabuto with her eyes before feeling him coming up behind her. She tried to turn but was too slow before the harsh strike to her neck, rendering her unconscious. She fell limply to the ground with a dull thud, succumbing to the darkness. Kabuto had turned and started towards Naruto and Tsunade before Shizune had even hit the ground. Grabbing a loose kunai off the dirt where it had fallen earlier, he moved as fast as he could around the injured Tsunade, positive she would be too slow to stop him, only to be greatly hawked by a kick to his stomach that sent him flying away. Back off. Tsunade bit out, fighting back the pain in her abdomen. The wound had yet to completely close and she just jerked it back open with her kick. Sorry. I just can't do that, Kabuto told her in that fake pleasant voice of his before moving once again towards the boy. Tsunade jumped to once again intercept him when a tear bomb went off straight in her face. Blinded, she couldn't see what Kabuto was doing. Hearing a small sound to the left, she threw herself in that direction only to feel a burning pain in her right shoulder as the result. Kabuto had ended up jamming his kunai into her. Now sure of Kabuto's location, Tsunade gave a massive punch with her uninjured left arm, hitting Kabuto in his injured left shoulder. Kaboo! To choked and groaned as he felt the joint give way under Tsunade's fist. Stumbling back, he sank to the ground as waves of pain came from his now doubly injured arm. Now frantic to complete his assignment, Kabuto reached into his pouch for the last of his shuriken before tossing them at both Tsunade and the younger blonde, hoping to leave her defending herself and unable to help the boy. Orochimaru. Yu was able to watch the whole thing as he dodged each attack Jiraiya sent after him. Growing angry that Kabuto could not kill one little boy thanks to Tsunade, he finally had enough. Why are you fighting so hard for that boy? Orochimaru screamed at her as she blocked yet another attack meant for the blonde behind her. Because, the woman never let her eyes stray from her own battle with Kabuto. I'm the Hokage. And that's what Hokages do. Even if it kills you? Orochimaru asked as he dodged yet another fire jutsu from the white-haired man. Especially if it kills me, Tsunade replied. Grievously hurt, she still managed to stand a little straighter as she spoke. Pulling the kunai savagely out of her shoulder, she launched it directly at Kabuto's face. The man quickly managed to knock it aside but was unprepared for the punch to the side of his face that quickly followed it. Seeing that his spy was greatly outmatched and he himself unable to fight with his full ability, Orochimaru bit back a vehement curse. Kabuto, come, we're leaving. Kabuto quickly appeared at his master's side before the two of them managed to escape by melding into the ground. As the adrenaline faded from his body and the roar of blood pounding in his ears faded, Jiraiya looked to the others. Naruto and Shizune were unconscious, and Tsunade was just about there from all the blood she was spilling. Yet Jiraiya had only one thing to say. Well, damn. Naruto awoke to yet another unfamiliar ceiling. He was starting to get sick of it. He wondered what he was doing there before the events of the fight came drifting back to him. Now slightly panicked, he sat up hurriedly only to be pushed back down again. Relax, they're gone, a female voice told him. Looking to his left, he saw the blonde-haired Sannin sitting by his bed. What happened? Naruto asked her before panic set in again. Hey, are you okay? Did those bastards hurt you? Where's Eros Sannin and Shizune-chan? He'd attempted to sit back up only to be forced down once again. I said relax twerp. I'm fine, the pervert's fine, Shizune's fine, and the bastards are gone. She told him. Well, that's good, Naruto said, relief flooding his words. What happened? The four-eyed bastard hit you with a special attack that severed some of the arteries leading to your heart. You're fine now, me and the fox healed you. Don't worry though, you got old Four Eyes pretty good yourself, which reminds me. Tsunade lifted her necklace up over her head. This belongs to you now. She settled the necklace around his neck. And also, I'm sorry. Being the Hokage doesn't mean you're stupid or a fool. it just means you love Konoha and everyone in it so much that you'd rather die than see them hurt. A long time ago I had some very precious people who felt that way. But when they died I forgot that. I forgot that to them death was preferable if it meant others wouldn't suffer. You helped me remember that. She smiled at him. But don't think for a moment that I want to be the Hokage for the rest of my life. You better hurry up and become stronger than me so that I can pass on that ugly old hat to you soon. Naruto looked at her in astonishment. Wait, does that mean you're gonna be the Hokage after all? He sat up once again, expecting Tsunade to push him back down, but the shove never came. Yep, soon you'll have to call me Hokage-sama. The blonde woman snickered. Yeah right. I never once called the old man Hokage-sama and I'm not gonna start with you Ba-chan. Naruto announced at the top of his lungs. A vein twitched under Tsunade's eye. Why you little twerp, how dare you call me old? She immediately launched herself at him. Take this, noogie of 1000 years of pain. She locked one arm around Naruto's neck and used the other to drive her first painfully into Naruto's head. Ow. What the hell, you named that? Naruto screamed. One floor below in the inn's tea shop, Shizune and Jiraiya were calmly sipping tea or sake when the sounds of screaming reached their ears. Seems like they're getting along well. Jiraiya remarked calmly. Right, Shizune drawled slightly, embarrassed. As the other patrons looked around in confusion. 2 days later, they were on the road back to Konoha, having had sufficient time to convalesce. Jiraiya had quickly set Naruto back on practicing the Rasengan. As he did so as telling Tsunade anything and everything about his life in Konoha, starting with his childhood and working his way through the present. Currently he had just started talking about Team 7. You'll have to meet them Ba-chan. They're great. Well Sasuke's a bit of a bastard and Sakura-chan can hit pretty hard and Kakashi-sensei is always late and usually reading porn all the time, but usually they're great. Suddenly the Rasengan in his hand exploded sending Naruto back 15 feet. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Shizune ran to his side and began checking him over for injuries. I'm fine. He's fine, Naruto and Jiraiya said at the same time. Hopping back up Naruto proved it by swinging his arms around in great circles. Brat you need to focus on the Rasengan, so shut up. Jiraiya told him. But I haven't finished telling Ba-chan all about Konoha. Naruto cried. What have I told you about calling me Ba-chan? Tsunade growled almost not so playfully as she punched him lightly in the back of the head. Of course it was light, but Naruto still winded up groaning on the ground. Tsunade already knows about Konoha, she did live there, remember? Jiraiya told ignoring what was happening to his pupil. Yeah but she doesn't know about my Konoha. Naruto defended springing back up from the ground. Fine, whatever, just don't blame me if you blow yourself too. Smithereens cuz you're too distracted by talking. Jiraiya said before moving 20 feet in front of the group so he wouldn't have to hear Naruto blabber. Hey you know Naruto-kun, all this training got me thinking. Shizune started before Naruto could begin his monologue again. Maybe I could teach you some medic jutsu, would you like that? Yeah, but I can't. Naruto told her. Why not? Tsunade asked. She'd actually been thinking the same thing, although she was going to hold off offering until Jiraiya had finished training him. My chakra control's no good for healing. Naruto explained. Kakashi-sensei said that since I have so much chakra and since it's wind-natured my control would probably never get above average. I probably will never be able to do genjutsu either he said. Besides, Eros Sanin said that since the fox's chakra is continually mixing a little with mine it might cause any medic jutsu to actually hurt the person. And anyways Sakura-chan is gonna be our team medic. She's already been training at the hospital. Oh, your teammate wants to learn to be a medic nin? Tsunade asked him, curiosity piqued. Young girls who wanted to train to be medics were rare. Yeah, she told me once that she never really thought she'd ever be useful because anything she could do, me or Sasuke could do better. But both me and Sasuke's control is no good for healing stuff, eh? Kakashi-sensei only knows the most basic of basics so now she has something all her own she can do. Back in Konoha, 3 people sneezed. That's odd, it must be the dust. Sakura said as she delicately wiped her nose. She, Sasuke, and Kakashi were currently on yet another mission to find as they had begun to call it, the cat from hell. Or maybe someone's talking about us. Kakashi told her with a smile. Who would be talking about all of us though? Sakura asked him before thinking about it. There was a moment of silence as they all gave it thought. Naruto. They sighed at the same time. When's the Dobi supposed to be back anyway? He should be here helping us with this damn cat. Sasuke growled as he looked under a bush without any real effort. Actually, it's probably better that he's not here. You know how much Tora hates him. Sakura said as she walked up a tree to look higher for the beast. That thing had no right to be called a common house cat. Sakura's right. Once Naruto does get back, I'm probably going to have to request that we not be given this mission again. Kakashi was not looking around, he was, rather, standing around reading his book. Are you serious? Why? Sakura asked as Sasuke swung his head back to look at their teacher incredulously. Well, I never realized before just how much harder this mission is with Naruto. Not to mention the cat always attacks him. Frankly, I'm surprised Naruto never impaled the creature with a kunai, especially after that time I had to send him to the hospital after what that cat did. It just wouldn't be prudent for us to take on this mission with the likelihood that Naruto will be forced to attack it out of defense. Kakashi looked up. Why aren't you two looking? You could help, you know. Sasuke told him coolly. Before moving silently to the next bush, slightly ticked but relieved this could be the last time they were doing this. Now I can't wait for Naruto to get back, Sakura said as she hopped to the next tree. Still, I wonder why Tora hates him so much. Naruto said that most animals hate him. Not hate, fear, Kakashi said before he could process it. Why would animals fear the Dobi? Sasuke asked in hope of an adequate answer. Kakashi ignored him, opting to give a light giggle instead. Just as Sasuke was contemplating launching a kunai at his teacher, Sakura gave a triumphant shout. Found him. She stood in a tall oak holding up the cat in both hands. Great, let's head back then. Kakashi snapped his book closed and walked quickly out of the forest, Sasuke and Sakura trailing behind. Weeks later, Team Kakashi was at the Hokage's tower when they were given some good news. Jiraiya was returning today with the next Hokage, which meant that Naruto was returning too. It's about time, Sakura exclaimed. They've been gone for a month and a half. Sasuke nodded his agreement and Kakashi just smiled. Well, since today is a special occasion, why don't we go wait for them by the gates instead of going on another D-ranked? Kakashi suggested. Hell yeah. Sakura pumped her fist in the air before noticing the strange looks she'd gotten due to her outburst. I mean, sure, that sounds great. It turned out that waiting by the gate was very boring. Kakashi had quickly taken out his book upon arriving, ignoring his students and the chunin guards. After half an hour, Sakura began practicing her genjutsu out of boredom while Sasuke worked on activating and deactivating his Sharingan. They all ignored the weird looks the chunin guards were giving them. After an hour though, one of the guards got up the nerve to ask Kakashi a question. What are you doing here? We are waiting for our last teammate to arrive. Kakashi looked up from his book and smiled at the guards. Why, are we bothering you? No, just. I'm going back over there now. The chunin guard quickly moved back to his post, creeped out slightly by Kakashi's odd smile. 2 more hours passed uneventfully. Except for the one time Sakura had screamed out, "Where the hell is he?" at the top of her lungs, causing the chunin guards to jump out of surprise. Just as Sasuke was beginning to think that going home would be a good idea, a voice drifted out of the woods close to the gate. Look Ba-chan, the gates. That's Naruto. Sakura scrambled up from where she'd been sitting against the wall. That's it, I've had it, you twerp. A female voice cried. A slight scuffle could be heard. Take this, noogie of the beautiful woman's revenge. Ah, ow, what the hell, it's the same thing, you gave it a different name. Ow, ow, ow. It was Naruto again. Team 7, minus Naruto, and the chunin guards shared looks of confusion before a small group of people came out of the woods. In front was Jiraiya, looking as though absolutely nothing odd was going on behind him. Then came Naruto being dragged along by a beautiful blonde woman currently occupied in giving him one of the harshest noogies anyone had ever seen. After those two came a young woman with short black hair, looking slightly worried, and carrying a pig in her arms followed shortly. Naruto! Sakura shouted. At the sound of her voice, the middle pair stopped moving and looked around. Spotting his teammates, Naruto quickly and quite easily burst out of Tsunade's arms. Sakura-chan, Kakashi-sensei. Suddenly his voice became monotonous. And the Dobi. The two then proceeded to glare at each other before Tsunade came up behind Naruto, placing a hand on his shoulder and leaning a little of her weight on him. "Who are your friends, twerp?" she asked with a smile on her face. "These are my teammates." Naruto smiled broadly up at her, unfazed by her actions. "This is Haruno Sakura-chan, Hitaki Kakashi-sensei, and Uchiha Sasuke-tem. Guys, this is Boss CH." He was cut off by a sudden blow to the back of his head. "Ow. What was that for Ba-chan?" He turned to look at her angry face. "I told you not to call me that. Certainly don't introduce me like that," she screamed back at him. Fine. This is Tsunade, she's gonna be the next Hokage, and them over there are Shizune-chan and Taunton." Naruto waved over at the others. "You could at least give me an honorific," the blonde told him, shaking a fist. "Hey, what do you want? At least I didn't call you Ba-chan," Naruto argued back. Shizune had by this time moved up to greet the others. "Please just ignore them, they're like this all the time." She sighed a little as she shook her head. "Okay." Kakashi smiled at her. "How can you stand it?" Sasuke asked her, eyeing the still fighting pair. "Oh no, it's really very nice to hear. Tsunade-sama is so much happier with Naruto-kun around. She never used to be so cheerful." The others watched as Naruto got knocked into the ground by Tsunade's fist. "You call that cheerful?" Shizune just laughed, maybe a little nervously. Omake. Gambling with Naruto. 5 days into their trek back to Konoha and they were out of money. "What the hell? Jiraiya, why didn't you bring more money?" Tsunade currently had Jiraiya by the neck and was shaking him, causing his head to wobble back and forth like a chicken's would. "I'm sorry. It took a lot longer than I thought to find you, and then we had to pay the hospital cause you blacked out after Orochimaru left, and I couldn't just leave you three lying around untreated." Jiraiya tried to defend himself. "Well then I guess we only have one option," Tsunade said. "Oh no, Tsunade-sama, I don't think Shizune was cut off by a loud laugh. Ha. We'll have to gamble." 2 hours later found the four plus a pig in a large, completely shady, gambling den. Tsunade had been losing what was left of their money rather steadily. Finally, when they were left with just Ino. For one bowl of ramen, Naruto lost his temper. "What the hell? All you do is lose. How hard could poker possibly be?" Naruto asked her. "What? Well, if you think it's so easy, you try." She handed him the money and got up from her seat, gesturing for him to take it. "Gladly. I couldn't do any worse than you." Naruto sat down and picked up the cards dealt to him. He wasn't quite sure of how to win, but after watching Tsunade for an hour he knew how not to win, and surely that was the same as knowing how to win, right? Without trading any of his cards he placed in all his money. The others around the table smirked and matched him. Each sure he didn't know what the hell he was doing. They were right, unfortunately. "Call," one of them said, laying down his cards. "Three of a kind." The others around the table groaned. Not having anything better than pairs. The first man reached to take the money before an iron grip snagged his arm. "Wait, look." Slightly dazed, Tsunade let go of the man's arm. She pointed to Naruto's hand where the 10, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace of Hearts were laid out. None of my cards match," Naruto said before being enveloped in a gigantic hug by Tsunade. "Doesn't matter, you won." Tsunade squeezed him tightly. You won, she chanted merrily. "Ca can't be our breath." Naruto choked out before being dumped back into his chair. "Okay, deal out the next hand," Tsunade said. 2 more hours later and Naruto had cleaned everyone in the place out, never getting a hand worse than 2 pair. Tsunade was in rapture and babbling something about having Naruto pay off all her debts for her. Jiraiya was in shock and quickly plotting to hit the gambling halls in every town on the way back. Shizune was counting the money for the 8th time, completely disbelieving its amount. Naruto just wondered how Tsunade could be so bad at something so easy. The day after Naruto returned found Team 7 at their usual meeting place. After waiting the customary hour for Kakashi to arrive, they quickly retired to a nearby training field. Well, I think the first thing we need to do is get reacquainted with each other, Kakashi told them with a small smile. So, why don't we share what's new? Starting with Sakura. Sakura was unprepared for being put on the spot but quickly started to explain her training, mostly just to Naruto as Sasuke and Kakashi had already heard it. I've learned a lot of genjutsu and medicine theory. I've managed to learn a few genjutsu. There's actually a lot to choose from because genjutsu is really only limited by the imagination of those who use it. I've learned a couple of medic jutsu but I know a lot more about healing without it, treating injuries and sickness, things like that. My taijutsu is some better, although I still kinda think it sucks. Quote, "You'll get better with time Sakura, you need to have patience," Kakashi told her. Sakura sighed. She knew that, she really did, but it was hard to be patient. When Sasuke seemed so good at everything. At least Naruto was still a moron, she assumed. Well, Sasuke, you next, Kakashi had meanwhile taken out his book, much to the irritation of all others present. Worked on my Sharingan and taijutsu. Learned a couple lightning jutsus and a fire one. Played a lot of mahjong. A vein under his eye twitched a little at that. Really, I played a lot of mahjong too. And poker, and dice. And pretty much anything else you can bet on. Naruto spoke exuberantly. Why? Sakura asked when it seemed like no one else would. Well, it turns out that I'm really good at gambling, and Ba-chan. Well, she sucks. So Ba-chan, Ero-sanin, and Shizune-chan decided that I could pay off all of Ba-chan's debts for her. We stopped at every gambling hall on the way back. Naruto told them happily, with a bit of annoyance present in his eyes. Really? Kakashi asked. You're that good? Kakashi was having visions of dancing money in his head. Yeah, but you can forget it. Anything I make gambling goes to paying Ba-chan's debts, they're huge. I get to keep 1/10 of everything I win though. Well, it was worth a shot. Kakashi sighed. Why don't you tell us what else you did, besides gamble? Alright, well, I learned some really awesome jutsus, the Rasengan, the Suko-Ru, and this one called the Tujin, although I haven't gotten that one down all the way yet. Naruto began ticking points off on his finger. What did they do? Sakura interrupted him. Naruto lost track of his train of thought. Oh, well, the Rasengan makes this tightly compacted ball of chakra that spins in many different directions at once. When you hit someone with it you can really shred them up, or if you don't do it quite right you can blast them away. I'm still working on being able to form it with one hand. Ero-sanin says it's amazing that I can do it with 2 hands, he thought it would take 6 months or more for me to get it. The Suko-Ru is a wind jutsu. It creates this big gust of wind. Although if you spin your chakra it makes a tornado. It's useful for knocking people down or kicking up a lot of dust but that's about all. Tujin is a wind jutsu too. It creates a short gust of wind with an edge to it like a sword so it can cut. It's hard to control though. I'm impressed. You learned more than I had thought you would, Naruto. Kakashi said. You want to hear what else I learned? Naruto asked him. There's more. Kakashi looked at him for a moment. Well, go ahead then. Well, after we found Ba-chan and she learned that I knew next to nothing about she made me learn all this medical stuff. She says it's just basic field first aid that should be taught in the academy but I still say it was really hard to learn. Naruto turned to Sakura. I don't know how you remember all that stuff. Setting bones, stopping blood loss, treating poison and fevers, it's too much. Naruto threw his hands up in frustration. Well, did you actually manage to learn it? Kakashi asked him. Naruto was brought out of his frustrated ponderings by Kakashi's question. Oh, yeah, I guess, I mean Ba-chan beat it into me enough. Literally. She'd beat me up and then show me what to do to treat it. Well, that's certainly an interesting way to learn it, Kakashi said cheerfully. He might have to try that method. Yeah, I'd like to see you learn it that way. Naruto mumbled in response. 2 weeks after Naruto had returned, 10D rank missions, and many training sessions with Kakashi, Team 7 found itself in the Hokage's office. Heya Ba-chan, Naruto called merrily as he and his team walked through the large oak doors. Suddenly his head snapped back as a heavy desk clock hit him in the face. Why the hell do I put up with that twerp? Tsunade sighed as she sat back down behind her desk, having stood to throw the clock. What did you do that for? Naruto threw the clock back at her only to growl in frustration when she merely lifted her hand to catch it. Naruto, show some respect for the Hokage. Sakura screamed, punching him in the head. Ow, what the hell did you do that for, Sakura-chan? Kakashi and Sasuke merely sighed and shook their heads slightly, not realizing that they were mirroring the other's actions. If it isn't my eternal rival. Kakashi. A voice boomed from the other end of the room. Looking up, the members of Team 7 noticed the others in the room for the first time. A tall man in an unfortunate-looking green jumpsuit stood slightly in front of three teens a little older than Team 7. Naruto suddenly recognized them. Hey, you're the guys who were there when I fought Gaara. He called. Hello, my most youthful comrade. A smaller version of the tall Chunin bounced up to Naruto. You are Naruto, right? Allow me to introduce myself again. I'm Rock Lee. Oh right, the eyebrow guy, Naruto said in response. Naruto. Sakura screamed and hit him in the head again. I'm sorry, Naruto's an idiot. That's okay, so's Lee. The girl with brown hair smiled at Sakura as they both ignored the indignant haze from Lee and Naruto. I'm Tenten, Lee's teammate. I'm Sakura. She was cut off from saying anything else by a green blur landing to kneel in front of her. Sakura. What a beautiful name befitting for such a beautiful flower as yourself. Please, if you'd only let me, I would give my life to serve you. Lee said, giving what he thought was a handsome expression. Thanks but no thanks. Sakura pulled her hand out from the hold that Lee had it in his tent and hit Lee in the back of the head with a fist. Could you all please pay attention? Tsunade said from her desk. She sighed as the others turned to face her. Thank you. Team 7, I assume you want AD rank. Well, how about you go find the fire? Ladies CA, she was cut off by a loud chorus of no's from Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura. Well, why not? Lady Tsunade, I think it would be for the best if Team 7 weren't given that mission again. Kakashi said calmly. Why not? She repeated. She looked down at the rather thick file on the mission. It says here that you've done this mission several times, especially lately. Yes, well, that was before Naruto came back. Kakashi said. Tora hates Naruto. Sakura explained. I don't really see what that has to do with anything. Tsunade frowned at them. The last time Naruto was part of this mission, the cat raked both sets of claws down his face, nearly losing him an eye. Kakashi said. Damn cat, Naruto mumbled, touching his face. Tsunade paled slightly. Really? She asked. There was nothing on that in the file. Yes. It's amazing it didn't leave any scars. Sakura trailed off, thinking that she didn't remember Naruto scarring from anything. Well, I don't think Team 7 will be doing that mission again anytime soon. Tsunade said as she set the mission file down before picking up another. There are, however, a great many other D ranks. Actually, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like my team to go on AC rank. Kakashi told her. The rest of Team 7 looked at him in surprise. He hadn't mentioned anything about that earlier. In fact, it was rather spur of the moment, but Kakashi knew his team could handle it and they deserved something after working so hard. Do you think they're ready? Tsunade said. My team has already been on a couple of C ranks. And Naruto of course went on that S rank with Jiraiya-sama. Tsunade frowned at his reply, rather than being reassured. The details of that mission were a secret, so no one but her, Jiraiya, Shizune, and Naruto himself knew how close he'd come to dying. Naruto saw Tsunade hesitating and decided to speak up. Come on Ba-chan, nothing like what happened then is gonna happen now. It's just a C rank. Naruto bounced over to her side. Soon, Aide turned to consider the blonde beside her. You never know though. Worry was etched into her face, leaving the others in the room to wonder just how close the two were. Hey, I could die just falling down the stairs and breaking my neck, right? So at least I'd be helping people on this mission. It's not like I'm gonna die anyway. I still haven't taken that ugly old hat from you yet. Naruto smiled brightly at her and Tsunade found herself smiling brightly in response. Alright, I do have an appropriate C rank. Actually, I believe you wanted a C rank for your team as well, Guy. Guy nodded at her. Well then, this is perfect. The client paid for 2 genin teams, so you guys can go on this one together. Kakashi groaned, quietly and under his breath, but his team still heard him and looked at him oddly. Yash, did you hear that? We get to go on a mission together, Kakashi. Guy had bounded over to where Kakashi stood with one of his little books. Did you say something? Kakashi drawled in response. There's that hip attitude again. Guy cried, pointing a finger at his self-proclaimed rival. But my team will do better on this mission than yours, or I'll do 500 push-ups and 500 sit-ups. Yes, show him the power of youth, Guy-sensei. Lee cried in exuberance. The others in the room couldn't help but simply stare. All right, back to the mission. Tsunade began shuffling the foe. Elders around on her desk looking for the right one. Where on earth did Shizune put that folder? She questioned quietly to herself. Naruto sighed before moving over to one of the stacks next to Tsunade's desk. Looking at the tabs declaring what was in them briefly, he began to tug one out of the middle of the stack. Naruto. What are you? Tsunade's reprimand was cut off as Naruto expertly pulled the correct folder out of the stack. Doing. She finished lamely as Naruto handed her the folder. How did you do that? The mission folders are always stacked according to importance. D and C rank. S are usually on the ground next to the desk with B, A, and S ranked mission on top of the desk. Only one folder was marked as requesting 2 genin teams in the C stack. Naruto explained, seeing the shocked expressions on everyone's face. He blushed, self-conscious. What's wrong? How did you know all that? I don't even know that yet. And how did you pull out the folder without them all falling over? Tsunade sounded slightly shocked. Oh well, before I could join the academy I used to hang out with the old man a lot here. He explained it all to me, saying I'd need to know it when I kicked him out of office. Naruto smiled sadly and Tsunade mirrored the expression. Anyways, the old man used to be able to pull them out like that. I remember once when I was 5 I tried to do it too. The whole stack collapsed. Naruto laughed a little, remembering being buried under that mountain of papers. The old man was so upset. Anyways, after that I started collecting newspapers. I'd stack them up and practice pulling one out. It took forever. The damn things kept collapsing. Tsunade smiled at him, imagining a tiny hand, belonging to Naruto, sticking out of an avalanche of papers. Eventually I got it right though. Hey, I remember the first time I showed the old man, he was so surprised. I bet, Tsunade said. Well, since Naruto kindly found the proper folder for us, let's begin the briefing. The 2 teams shuffled to stand at attention in front of her. The clients are 3 merchants. They're traveling from Narasu to Kando and they want shinobi to protect them, their families, and their merchant carts from any possible bandits along the way. You 8 will travel to Narasu to meet them. It's about half a day from here, so you should be able to get there today. You'll stay the night there and then set out tomorrow. Kando is about a week travel at civilian speed. You can rest a day in Kando and then return here. All in all it should take a little less than 2 weeks, alright? The 2 teams nodded at her. Alright, go get ready, pack and stuff, whatever, then meet back at the gates in 2 hours, okay? Kakashi said, looking at Guy for confirmation. That is fine with me. Guy turned to his team and nodded. They quickly excused themselves and left. Alright, let's go. Kakashi told his team. Bye Ba-chan. Suddenly Naruto found himself in a headlock. Noogie style. Fist of Doom. Tsunade cried as she attacked. Ow. What the hell? You changed the name again. 2 hours later, Team Guy and Team 7 met by the front gates of the village, Naruto still mumbling under his breath about Tsunade. Crazy old hag, the hell's she naming them for? And so on. Naruto, shut up about the noogie already. Sakura screamed at him, tired of hearing about it. Team Guy was looking very confused. Hokage-sama often punishes Naruto for his many indiscretions by giving him noogies. Sasuke said in response to their puzzled expressions. What's so bad about noogies? Tenten asked. They can't possibly be that bad. They're embarrassing. Plus she uses her monstrous strength. Naruto cried before being knocked to the ground by a fist to the back of the head. I come all the way out here to wish you good luck and you're calling me a monster. Tsunade said, looking angry. Shizune stood by her side shaking her head a little in exasperation, Taunton the pig held in her arms. Jiraiya also stood with them. Ha ha ha, serves you right brat. The previous day Jiraiya had been caught in his peeping due to an over-exuberant greeting from Naruto. Whatever arrow Sanin. You're just mad cause you got caught peeping on the girls at the hot spring yesterday. Naruto told Jiraiya as he leapt up from the ground. Jiraiya chuckled nervously as 6 pairs of eyes, all the women, plus Guy and Lee, who was copying Guy, glared at him. Well anyway, I hope you all do well on your mission and return safely. Remember you're representing Konoha out there, so don't do anything stupid. Tsunade looked pointedly to Naruto. What are you looking at me for? Naruto cried as the others all also turned to look at him. Just be safe, alright. Tsunade sighed. Sure thing Ba-chan. Suna. Suddenly developed a twitch under her right eye. We should get going. Kakashi interjected quickly before Tsunade could attack Naruto again. Right, get going all of you. Tsunade said, but before they could turn to leave she enveloped Naruto in a gigantic hug. Don't you get hurt, you twerp. She murmured as she squeezed him. Fine, C can't be breathe. Naruto choked out as she hugged him a little too tight. She released him quickly but didn't apologize, just smiled lightly. Remember to keep practicing the Rasengan and the Tujin while you're gone, and keep doing those chakra control exercises. Jiraiya told him sternly. Yeah, I know. Naruto replied. Take care Naruto-kun, when you get back I'll treat you to a bowl of ramen. Shizune smiled at him as Tonton squealed in her arms. Awesome. I'll tell you all about the mission then Shizune-chan. Naruto told her. Team Guy looked over at the rest of Team 7 as all this was going on, confused at the close relationships Naruto was showing to have with several high-ranking ninja. Sakura was smiling at the obvious displays of affection. Sasuke was tapping his foot and rolling his eyes, clearly irritated with the whole time-consuming thing. Kakashi was grinning broadly, prepared to tease Naruto about it as soon as they exited the gates. None of them looked very surprised. Eventually Naruto was able to get away from the strangely affectionate Tsunade after she gave him another massive hug and both teams were able to leave through the gates. 20 minutes from Konoha the teasing began. I didn't know you were that close to Tsunade-sama, Naruto-kun. Kakashi said with a smirk on his face. Huh, Naruto replied. Yeah, she seemed awfully affectionate back there Naruto. Sakura said catching on to Kakashi's teasing. Huh, Naruto said again with a puzzled look plastered on his face. Don't bother teasing him. The doby's too stupid to understand. Sasuke said. Hey, I understood that, Tem. Naruto shook a fist in Sasuke's direction as Sasuke smirked. I'm surprised. Sasuke replied. Naruto growled lightly. Still you do seem rather close with Tsunade-sama. Tenten cut in, trying to defuse a fight. Shish. He was so used to having to do it with Lee and Neji. Well I guess. Naruto shrugged. It's rare to be so close to a Hokage though. Tenten said, trying to be polite, but still curious. Really? Naruto asked. Naruto had a very close relationship to the Sandaime as well, he doesn't see it as being that odd. Kakashi told her kindly. Oh, that's right, I remember when you came to tell him when the Sandaime D, the weapons master broke off as Naruto suddenly bounded past her to take the lead, a dark look on his face and killing intent rising around him slightly. I would suggest you don't mention that. Naruto didn't take it too well. Kakashi replied blandly as he looked ahead at his student. Didn't take it well was an understatement, Tenten recalled. Naruto had screamed at Kakashi when he'd heard, calling him a liar and a few other things. Then he'd rushed off faster than someone suffering from major chakra loss should have been able to, panic and fury surrounding him like a cloak. As he'd gotten further from them she thought she saw a haze of red chakra cover him, but that might have been a trick of the light. He was so sad for days when that happened. Sakura murmured from her position right behind Tenten. Sasuke nodded agreement. It had been very odd to see the normally happy Naruto so down. We should stop talking about it. He might hear. Kakashi said, and that ended the conversation. We should arrive in Narasu in about 3 or 4 hours if we keep this speed. 3 or 4 hours. I bet we could get there sooner if we just. Guy was cut off from suggesting they all run fast by a slap to the head from Tenten. No way. There's no way I'd be able to keep up if we went any faster. Sakura and Sasuke nodded. The town of Narasu was a small one right next to a large forest. As Hai no Kuni was covered in forest it was to be expected. After meeting briefly with their clients, they arranged to stay in a rather iffy hotel. Sakura and Tenten in one room, Kakashi and Guy in another and Neji, Lee, Naruto, and Sasuke squashed into a third. This bites, said Naruto. I should have just paid for my own room. He was laying out blankets on the floor, as no way in hell he sharing a bed with Sasuke and he'd lost at rock, paper, scissors so he was stuck on the floor. This is a resort town, hotels here are expensive, especially this time of year. Sasuke told him, no way you would afford your own room. Kantu, I've made a lot of money gambling the past month. Naruto told him, Naruto, gambling is very unyoutful. Lee cried before Neji threw a pillow at him. Quiet, you'll disturb the other guests. Neji told Lee, gambling is illegal for anyone under the age of 16. Not if I have permission from the Hokage. Besides, most places don't care how old you are as long as you have money. Naruto told him as he took the pillow from Lee, as it just so happened to have been his. Why would the Hokage give you special permission to gamble? Neji inquired. Turns out Ba-chan really sucks at gambling and I'm really good, so she said that if I use most of what I make to pay off her debts I could keep 10%. Naruto sat down on his pile of blankets before taking out a strip of paper from his equipment pouch. Sighing, he began the paper knife exercise before throwing the paper in the air and trying to guide it around the room. Still, you can't win all the time. What if you lose all your money? Neji frowned at him. Well, I haven't lost yet. Naruto replied with a cocky grin. The next day dawned bright and clear, not too hot or too windy, in other words perfect for traveling. The three merchants they were accompanying were all joyful-looking men. They had been friends for a long time and had arranged to take this trip together so they would only have to pay for two teams rather than each paying for one of their own, something that irritated Kakashi slightly. Conversation was light and the pace was sedate, allowing Naruto to work on his Rasengan. When he began to channel chakra for the first one, Team Guy had felt the sharp spike in chakra and swiftly dropped into combat stances. Team 7 and the merchant families had looked at them oddly. What are you doing? Sakura asked. Didn't you feel that chakra spike? Tenten asked back. It's just Naruto. Sakura replied, pointing back to Naruto who had fallen behind slightly so as to not risk hurting anyone should his Rasengan become unstable. Naruto was standing with a confused look on his face and a completed Rasengan in his hand. Suddenly his facial expression changed to shock. And he managed to bite out, "Oh she," before the Rasengan in his hand exploded sending him back several feet. Damn it all. You distracted me. Naruto shouted accusingly at Team Guy as he got up and dusted himself off. The merchants and their families were standing around in awe at the boy who had just exploded himself. What were you doing? Neji asked calmly. I was practicing my Rasengan if you must know. If I lose too much focus it can become unstable and explode. Naruto then proceeded to grumble under his breath as he started to form a second one. The Rasengan. But isn't that the Yondaime? Guy trailed off looking to Kakashi who had started walking again, little orange book in his hand. Yes, Jiraiya-sama taught it to him. He's currently practicing using it with one hand. Kakashi said as he flipped a page. The others had started moving again as well and Naruto returned to the back of the group. That's impressive. Your student must be bursting with the power of youth to have mastered such a difficult jutsu. Guy cheered from beside Kakashi. Huh, did you say something, Guy? Kakashi replied with a blank face, although on the inside he was smirking proudly. Tenten and Sakura both sighed at the antics of their respective sensei. They were now walking among the families of the merchants to be able to guard them better in case of attack. They're all very strange, aren't they? Natsumi, a daughter of the cloth merchant who was a couple years older than Tenten, asked. Who? Our sensei. Yeah, they're very odd, but you get used to it. Sakura told her. It must be hard, being surrounded by guys all the time. Natsumi spoke lightly. Yeah, but that's okay. I can still hang out with girls when I don't have a mission or team training time and the guys aren't so bad, even if they are pretty irritating. Tenten said smilingly. Yeah, Naruto may be pretty dense, and Sasuke doesn't talk a lot and Kakashi sensei's a bit of a pervert but, Sakura got cut off by Natsumi's sharp intake of breath. A pervert, and they let him teach children. Natsumi gasped outraged. And girls. Hey, Kakashi sensei might be a little perverted but he's a great ninja and he would never do anything to us. Sakura told her, greatly offended and not bothering to hide it. You're not a shinobi so you wouldn't understand, but your team is like your family. Kakashi-sensei's family and you're not allowed to insult him. She then stormed off, telling Naruto to quit practicing and take her place. Geez, what flew up her butt? Naruto mumbled as he took a place next to the bunned girl. Our assignment insulted her, Tenten said coldly, tilting her head at the now quite affronted Natsumi. Well, that's stupid. You shouldn't go around insulting the people protecting you. Naruto said matter-of-factly. I was just worried. She said you sensei was a pervert. Natsumi said. Which one? Naruto asked. I have two senseis and they're both perverts, although Kakashi-sensei isn't nearly as bad as Ero Sanin. Natsumi just stared at him before moving to stand by her mother. Well, that went well. Naruto said. Tenten giggled at his side. Around noon they all took a break for lunch. The families dug out nicely wrapped lunch boxes as the shinobi took out unappetizing trail rations. Team 7 was a little surprised when Naruto didn't complain about his rations and just ate them. What they did, in Tino, was that Jiraiya used to hit him whenever he complained about them, thus he was quickly broken from the habit. Well, we're making good time, we should have no problem getting to Kando on schedule. Kakashi said, breaking the silence. He was a bit unnerved when the merchants and their families all glared at him a little. As long as nothing bad occurs. He then turned to his team. Alright, while the clients finish their lunches and have a little break, we'll train. Team 7 just barely stopped the groans. Kakashi made sure to take them far enough away not to endanger anyone else. Naruto, you can work on whatever the hell Jiraiya has been teaching you. While Kakashi had been trying to teach Naruto a better taijutsu form, he was more concerned with Naruto learning everything Jiraiya could teach him before Jiraiya had to leave again. Sasuke, I want you to give me 150 sit-ups, 150 push-ups, and then climb that tree 20 times, weights on the entire time, then work with your Sharingan. Sasuke felt his eye twitch. Sakura, you'll be working with me. I want to see how far your taijutsu has gotten. He quickly dropped into a guarded stance as Sakura took up another stance 20 feet across from him. Sakura stood nervously in her form. She hadn't improved that much since their last fight. She'd been neglecting her taijutsu in favor of genjutsu and medic jutsu. She knew that she shouldn't be. But genjutsu and medic jutsu came so easily to her, unlike taijutsu which she struggled with. Taking a deep breath, she launched herself at her sensei. 3 feet from Kakashi, Sakura. A duck to the left and tried to deliver a kick to the base of his spine. Kakashi quickly jumped away and then came at her with a left uppercut. Sidestepping swiftly to the left, she barely avoided it before trying to bury her knee into his side. He caught her knee in his left hand and swung his right fist around to hit her in the jaw. Jumping up and tilting her head, she avoided the blow before twisting her body around to strike at his head with her free leg and pull her knee out of his grasp. Kakashi jumped backwards to avoid the blow as Sakura landed in a crouch. Good, your footwork has gotten better. Kakashi smiled at her. Sakura felt her eyebrow give a violent twitch. The taijutsu style she was learning was all about the footwork. She hardly ever used her hands to fight anymore. Ashi said that as the team's medic she had to take care of her hands. She was brought out of her reverie when Kakashi made a dash at her. Shifting at the last moment, she brought her body out of the way but not her left leg. Kakashi tripped over it and they were both brought down in a tangle of limbs as Sakura shouted in surprise. Oof. Ow. Sakura cried as Kakashi landed heavily on top of her. Ashi quickly sprang up with all the speed and grace of a shinobi, but Sakura stayed on the ground, winded. Everyone had come running when they heard Sakura's shout and seen the two falling to the ground. Kakashi kneeled down next to Sakura. Are you alright? I didn't hurt you, did I? Kakashi asked, concerned that she hadn't stood yet. I'm fine. You just knocked the wind out of me, sensei. Sakura gasped out. She then struggled to stand. Naruto and Sasuke pulling at her elbows to help. She winced suddenly as she put weight on her left foot. Seeing the wince, Naruto looked down at her foot. The ankle was swelling and turning purple already. He could tell that even with her sandals on. I think you sprained your ankle, Naruto told her. Hearing that, everyone, Team 7, Team Guy, and the merchant families looked down at her ankle. Just great, Sakura cried as Naruto and Sasuke gently sat her back down again. Naruto, go get my stuff. My first aid equipment is in my bag. She then carefully tugged her sandal off her left foot. This is your fault. One of the wives of the merchants accused Kakashi. If you had been more gentle, she was cut off by Sasuke's laugh. There is no place for gentleness when training. Sasuke told them. He's right. We're shinobi, not children. If we don't want to die then we need to train hard. Neji said coldly. Kakashi-sensei didn't do anything wrong, it was an accident. I've had worse during training, so has Naruto and Sasuke, in fact they usually get a lot more beat up than me. Sakura didn't continue as Naruto came back with her things. She then begged, and to examine her ankle as best she could. Running through some hand seals she placed glowing green hands over her ankle. Instantly the swelling went down a great deal. After more hand seals she placed her hands yet again over her ankle and sighed as the pain receded. Yet a third set of hand seals caused the bruising to fade. Sakura was intently aware of everyone watching her but didn't pay any mind as she dug out a cream from her bag and a roll of bandages. Naruto, do you think you can wrap my ankle for me? It's hard to do it properly on yourself. Tsunade-sama taught you right. Sakura asked as they applied the cream to her ankle. Sure thing. If there is one thing I can do it's apply bandages. He gave her a thumbs up and a wide smile, a smile she returned as she handed over the bandages. Settling Sakura's foot on his leg as he sat in front of her, he swiftly and expertly wrapped the bandage around the arch of her foot and halfway up her shin. Tucking the end in, he lightly set Sakura's foot back onto the ground, all done. Quote, "Wow, you're really good at that," Sakura said looking at the bandages around her ankle. "I've had a lot of practice." Naruto waved away the compliment. "You never bother to treat your wounds." Sakura frowned. "You don't ever need to." "Oh, not on myself. On Ero-sanin," Naruto told her. "He's always getting beat up by either Ba-chan or the women he spies on or by various men related to the women he spies on. Sometimes I think the real reason Ba-chan made me learn first aid is so she doesn't have to treat Ero-sanin after she hurts him." The blonde ended with a laugh. "Well Sakura, how does the ankle feel, can you continue?" Kakashi asked her. She nodded and with the help of Naruto and Sasuke again she stood. Once upright she cautiously put some W8 on her ankle and then more when it didn't buckle. She then took several steps, not limping in the slightest. "Well, it seems those medic jutsus did their job. It doesn't hurt at all and I can only feel a tiny bit of weakness in them. As long as I don't need to run I think I'll be fine." Sakura told the crowd looking at her. "Good, why don't you sit and rest while everyone else finishes up their lunches?" Kakashi told her. She could ride in one of the carts. A merchant named Kawamura said. No, if there's an attack it would take her too long to get out of the cart and to where she could defend everyone. Her ankle is fine, she'll walk, Kakashi told him. Isn't that being a bit harsh? Kawamura's wife asked. Sakura said she could handle it. I have faith in Sakura. Kakashi said blandly. Now we've lost enough time as it is, I suggest you all finish your lunches as fast as you can. With that everyone moved to get ready to leave again. Omake, Tsunade's grief. 2 days into her new job as Hokage and Tsunade was just about ready to pull her beautiful blonde hair out by the roots. The paperwork was horrible. There were forms for everything. Honestly, did she really need to fill out a form every time an Anbu member broke their sword? Shouldn't they have to fill it out at least? And what the hell were the Anbu doing with their swords that they broke so often anyway? Tired and Ranky Tsunade was not in the mood for visitors as she jerkily signed her name to yet another sword requisitioning form, not that her blonde visitor knew or cared. Hey Ba-chan, what's up? He said as he bounced into a chair. Tsunade had soon found out that Naruto was allowed into the Hokage's office at any time so long as no one else was in there. It was something the Sandaime had set up and the Chunin guards had allowed him to continue with her. Tsunade hadn't the heart to change the orders when she first learned of them, but now she was seriously considering it. Not now Naruto. I have a lot of paperwork to do. She frowned at the stacks waiting to be started. Lot. Why don't you just do what the old man did and use Kagebushins? He asked her. Because, wait, what? Tsunade looked up from her form to stare at him. What did you just say? Why don't you use Kagebushins to help do the work? He said timidly, wondering if he'd done something wrong in suggesting it. Suddenly, he found himself a foot off the ground in Tsunade's arms. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Why didn't I think of that? She gave him a smacking kiss on the cheek before releasing him to form the proper seal. With a burst of smoke, 3 more tsunades filled the room. You 3, do this paperwork. She told them before turning back to Naruto. Let's you and me go get some sake. She said as Shish. He grabbed his arm and dragged him out the window. But I can't grin nkkkk. Wafted up to the window as the 3 tsunades started work. It was 2 days from Kando and everyone was getting grouchy from the thick rains that had started the day before, and hadn't stopped since. It was actually a surprise when the water first fell. It usually only rained a few times a year in Fire Country. Because of this, paths that could have been laid in rock were in dirt, so the trails were turned to mud, leaving everyone soaked and muddy, despite rain slickers, and in a foul mood. For the 3rd time that day, one of the wheels of the merchant carts got stuck in the mud, leaving Kakashi, Guy, Lee, Naruto, and 2 of his clones to dig it out. After lifting the cart up out of the mud, which gave a sick slurk sound as it came loose, Kakashi observed their wet traveling party. Alright, why don't we just go ahead and take a break? Eat lunch and try not to get any muddier. Kakashi sighed before quickly leaping into the trees of a nearby grove, wanting as much shelter as possible from the annoying shower. This sucks. Naruto grumbled for the 9th time that day. We know it sucks, Baka, we have to put up with it too. Sakura grumbled back at him, lacking even the motivation to yell. Everyone had by this time moved to the trees for their meager protection, the carts lined up carefully by the side of the road. The clients were all huddled up together, attempting to eat swiftly while staying standing. Oh, ick, commented Tenten out of the blue. I don't even want to know what just found its way into my sandal. She made a face down at her foot. I gave up trying to keep things out of my sandals hours ago, Sakura told her dully. The shinobi began to eat their rations quickly, sitting on semi-dry branches up in the trees. It must be Kami-sama. Naruto called suddenly as a cold wind blew through the trees, dousing him in a fine spray of water. Kami-sama must hate me. Probably, Sasuke told him. Naruto shot him a half-hearted glare, too miserable to continue the fight. Well, it's not like he only hates you. He must hate us all. Sakura mumbled loud enough to be heard by everyone. Yeah, but he hates me most of all. Naruto argued back, not quite sure why he was bothering too, but he's so bored that anything was interesting at that moment. That's obvious, Sasuke replied to the air. But Naruto heard and sent another glare at the dark-eyed boy. You can just shut up, Naruto sneered at him. I could, but then who would put you in your place? Sasuke sneered back, much more successfully too. You wanna fight? Naruto stood on his branch in the tree and was joined a second later by Sasuke, who was on a parallel branch. I swear to whoever, if you 2 start fighting again, I'm gonna kick both your asses. Sakura snarled ferociously at the 2 boys and they then promptly sat back down. Sakura sighed as she popped another piece of her rations into her mouth. She felt a little bad about threatening Sasuke-kun, but she was just so miserable right now that she couldn't help it. Those 2 always gave her headaches when they fought, plus if they got hurt they'd expect her to heal them. Below them the clients were now glancing nervously at Sakura, who they had thought was very sweet, but who they now saw was actually pretty scary. Hey, thanks for stopping them, Sakura-chan, Tenten laughed nervously, trying to break the suddenly thick atmosphere. Across from them Kakashi was ignoring a loud guy as Neji was doing the same to Lee. Yeah, I just wish I could get those 4 idiots to shut up. Sakura glared at said idiots. Kakashi and Neji shivered a little at the sudden rise in killing intent, but Guy and Lee both seemed not to notice it. 5 minutes later everyone looked up simultaneously as the rain suddenly ceased. It's a miracle, Naruto whooped from his tree. Yes, the youthful sun has shown itself to us again, Guy called loudly, like witnessing a stream in the middle of the desert. It fills me with hope again. Guy-sensei, that was amazing, Lee said, looking up in admiration to his idol. Thank you, Lee, Guy screamed. Guy-sensei, Lee. The 2 jumped from their trees to run to each other. Aw man, if you 2, Guy hug, again I'm gonna lose it. Naruto covered his eyes with his hands, the rest of the ninjas similarly blocking their vision. The clients, however, watched as one might a train wreck, in horrid fascination. After the two had separated, and Naruto had finished making gagging noises from behind his hand, they set off again down the muddy road. An hour later Sakura and Neji were desperately wishing for the rain to come back. The sun had returned with a vengeance and the heat had swiftly climbed, leaving the air incredibly muggy and Sakura's and Neji's hair to frizz. That's it, this mission is officially going in my book of missions that sucked. Right in between the cat from hell and the wave mission. Sakura mumbled, looking at her usually silky pink locks in despair. 2.5 hours from the village Jukan, a 1 day's travel from Kando and where the traveling party was going to spend the night, Sakura noticed Naruto was doing something weird. He'd moved back some time ago to once again practice his Rasengan. He would form one in his right hand and hold it there for a couple of minutes before letting it dissipate. After a few minutes rest he would start the process over again. Now though he'd been holding one in his hand for the past 10 minutes. Sakura supposed he could have just been practicing something new about the Rasengan. But the way his eyes kept darting to the trees on the left side of the road made her think something was up. Turning to face where Kakashi and Sasuke were, she noticed that Kakashi had surreptitiously lifted one of his hands to his height and Sasuke's shoulders were stiff. She swung her head to look over at Team Guy. Aside from Guy, who was slowly clenching his fists, none of them were acting odd. Sakura casually swung one of her hands as she walked to land on her kunai pouch and reached one finger in to hook around the ring of a knife. She wasn't quite sure what was going on, but she would be prepared for anything. A loud cry pierced the air behind them, causing everyone to whirl around to face it. 20 feet behind them Naruto stood under the branches of a particularly large tree. A tree that someone was jumping out of. Right as the attacker attempted to slash at Naruto's throat with a large knife, Naruto sidestepped, brought his arm up and rammed his Rasengan into the left shoulder of his attacker. The Rasengan blasted the man back with a loud crack of what the medic to be in Kunoichi recognized as breaking bone and a sharp screech of pain. This bandit had friends though, a lot of friends. Before he even hit the ground the rest of his gang flew out of the trees and attacked. Sakura threw her kunai into the knee of one, running to where Naruto was near the rear as Sasuke and Kakashi both leapt up to avoid 3 others, Sharingan exposed. She couldn't see Team Guy behind her, but she assumed from the many loud thunks and T-wakes, and the cries of various bandits that they were doing okay. Reaching Naruto, she just about got pulled off her feet when a particularly ugly bandit grabbed her hair and held tight. Sakura bit off a scream and winced as she felt several strands rip out. Sakura-chan. Naruto cried when he saw her head being forced back. He tried to move to help his teammate but was pushed away and closer to the thick of the fighting by several arrows suddenly striking the ground before him. Sakura grit her teeth, yanked her hair out the ugly man's grasp, and spun on one foot, delivering the other straight to his chest. A loud oomph sound came out of the bandit's lungs as the air was knocked from him. Stepping back, Sakura bent her fingers swiftly into the seals, casting a genjutsu over the unsuspecting man and forced him to sleep. He then turned back to see how the rest were doing. Roughly a dozen bodies, all bandits, lay strewn across the ground, unconscious. And yet another dozen were still fighting over their fallen comrades against her teammates and Team Guy. What is this? A bandit convention? Naruto yelled as he punched another one in the face. Sakura would have winced if she had not been used to her blonde friend's brash style of taijutsu. That man's face would never be the same again. You shouldn't talk in the midst of battle. Neji told him before delivering an open palm strike to the chest of another thug. You're talking. Naruto murmured as he started the hand signs for a jutsu. Fuden. Suko-ru. The Suko-ru had enough chakra to blast 2 bandits back, flinging them heavily into 2 trees that shook from the impact. The men hit the trees with a shudder and fell to the dirt, knocked out from hitting their heads against the solid trunk. Neji was sealing off chakra points wherever he could and dealing damage to kidneys, livers, and lungs, causing bandit after bandit to fall at his feet, hacking up blood. Sasuke was electrocuting any bandit he could touch with a particularly nasty lightning jutsu Kakashi had taught him. Kakashi and Guy had calmly stepped back from the fray, intent on gauging their students' success in dealing with the onslaught. Occasionally a bandit would turn their way, only Obi swiftly dispatched by one of the 2. Tenten was throwing kunai after kunai, hitting legs, hands, arms, and causing most of the bandits to drop their own weapons. Using these resources, the Brune TTE would snatch them from the fallen men and use them against others, never pass up a good source, right? Lee was simply beating them into submission with superior speed and strength. Can't beat the classics. Naruto had hit 2 more with Rasengans and was now engaging another in taijutsu. Although his style was still crude, his speed was still better than the thugs that had no training. Sakura D moved back towards the others and was also using taijutsu, plus a fun little genjutsu that made her appear 3 inches further to the left than she was, to take care of her opponents, who couldn't figure out how they kept missing her. Sakura was glad that they were just common bandits and not ninja. A shinobi, even a completely inept one, would be able to recognize that something was off with their perception and then realize the genjutsu, but not these bandits. Although the number of them was quite irritating, they weren't much of a threat. Sakura had just jumped and kicked a bandit in the face, and was happy to see his face was just as deformed as Naruto's victims when something hit her in the back of her head. The blow wasn't hard enough to knock her out, but it unbalanced her enough for the attacker to get his arm around her shoulders and pull a sword up to her throat. She felt her eyes widened. Stupid, she heard her inner self cry. You got caught. Stop now, or the girlie dies, the man holding her snarled. He hadn't seemed to realize that the others had already stopped, having run out of bandits to fight. Now they stood unmoving, Kakashi, Sasuke, and Naruto with murderous expressions on their faces. Your friends are all beaten. You're all alone now. I wouldn't do something stupid if I were you. You kill Sakura and you'll have nothing to stop us from killing you, Kak. Ashi spoke calmly, yet there was no mistaking the threat in his voice. A reverse grip kunai was clutched tightly in Sasuke's hand, poised to attack at the man's first opening. Naruto had no weapon, but Sakura could have sworn his canines had grown longer and his nails looked sharper. He raised his head slightly and Sakura nearly gasped, despite the death grip the bandit had on her, which was cutting off her air. His eyes were red. Just let her go and you won't have to die. Kakashi was saying calmly, but his eyes were no longer on the bandit. They had slid sideways to watch Naruto. That's when Sakura felt it. The sudden wave of killing intent that came washing over her in thick waves. The bandit behind her shivered and flinched, and Sakura took her chance, biting down fiercely on his arm and slamming her foot into his. All her body's force thrown into the kick. She winced slightly from the pressure put onto her sprained ankle, but pushed it aside for the moment. The bandit dropped his grip on her instantly and Sakura fell face first onto the ground, her ankle giving out on her. Seeing their opportunity, both Sasuke and Naruto rushed the bandit while Kakashi grabbed Sakura and carried her closer to the other Konoha shinobi. As the bandit, through what Sakura believed was sheer luck, managed to swing his sword around to block Sasuke's kunai in time so he could keep his head on his shoulders. Naruto slipped in under his other arm and hit him straight in the heart with a fully formed Rasengan. Rather than sending him flying back, like all previous Rasengans had done, the swirling ball thrust straight through his chest, causing the man to choke and cough up blood with a rather amusing shell-shocked expression on his broken and ugly face. Sasuke stared at the body a little surprised. None of Team 7, besides Kakashi, had yet to kill anyone on any of their missions. Naruto, however, had turned away before the body could even hit the ground and was running towards where Kakashi had carried Sakura with a concerned look welling in his once again ocean blue eyes. Sakura-chan, are you alright? Naruto asked her once he reached them. Team Guy and the various merchants and Family members had gathered around Sakura as well, but were now looking at the blonde a bit oddly. Yeah, Sakura breathed out, still recovering air from the hold the man had on her and then the fights, and then barely breathing watching Sasuke and Naruto fought. Her mind started to reel back into motion when she glanced once again at the body. She took a shaky breath and tore her eyes from her former captive and back to her blonde teammate. She cleared her throat to rid the slight crack in her voice. Did you kill him? Naruto looked back at the body and then shrugged nonchalantly. I guess so, he said as Sasuke walked back to join them, his face schooled into a blank expression, eyes dark and haunted, seeing things that were not there. Oh, Sakura said mildly, trying to get her act together. Is anyone else hurt? I could treat it. Sakura didn't quite know what to say or even what to think about Naruto killing someone for her. Her inner voice said, so instead she changed the subject. Tenten sensed that Sakura wanted to distract herself from the whole mess and held out her left arm, which had a very shallow cut on it. "One of them got me in the arm," she said lightly, gaining the other girl's attention. "Okay, let me just go get my bag and I'll heal that for you." Sakura retrieved her bag from where she'd dropped it when the fight had begun before treating Tenten's wound. "Alright, Sasuke, Naruto, I want you two to secure the unconscious bandits while I deal with the body," Kakashi told them. The two nodded before gathering up some rope and setting to work. "Neji, you and Lee check with the clients, make sure no one is hurt and nothing is missing," Guy told his students before following Kakashi to dispose of the body. They ended up camping in the woods again. They had been delayed by the fight, 2 sprained ankles and a broken nose that the clients had to have treated by Sakura, all injuries sustained by them trying to run, and repacking an overturned cart. They'd only traveled 5 miles from the site of the attack before dusk was on them. Lee and Naruto had set off to find sufficient kindling that might have been spared from the HEAV. Why rains as everyone else began setting up tents or preparing dinner. "It's just not natural," Sakura overheard the wife of a merchant named Toriyami say in a hushed whisper. She couldn't help but eavesdrop a little after that. How could that child just kill someone like that and not even look like it bothered them? Sakura then realized they were talking about Naruto. What are they teaching these children? It's like they're making them into monsters. That was beyond enough to Sakura, who suddenly snapped at the blatant insult to her teammate. "Don't you dare call Naruto a monster." Her voice must have been louder than she wanted it to be because all work around the camp ceased and everyone looked their way. "You don't know him at all. Naruto is a great shinobi and you're just some civilian." She was broken from her tirade when she felt a hand on her shoulder, only to find that it belonged to Kakashi. Sakura's right. The girl couldn't help but glow at the man for reprimanding their employers. "Naruto is a great shinobi and one day he's going to be the Hokage. It would be best if you didn't insult him where he could hear you." Kakashi nodded his head to the left, where both Lee and Naruto stood. Arms full of thin pieces of wood. "That kid, he'll never be Hokage." The eldest son of Toriyami scoffed. Even civilians knew what being Hokage meant. "Naruto, how long have you been there?" Sakura asked at the same time as the civilian did. "Long enough," he shrugged before dumping his wood near the fire. "I'm sorry," Sakura said sadly. Naruto looked up at her with wide eyes. "Why? You didn't do anything," Naruto told her, confused by his friend's actions. "But, what she called you?" Sakura was embarrassed to feel the tears come to her eyes. It had been a long day and she had proven to be useless once again. Now she had to get saved again, and now her teammate, her friend, was being called a monster. It was just too much. "What? No, that's not, I mean," he waved his arms around anxiously. "Not able to handle a crying girl. It's not like I've never heard it before." He finally sputtered out before his brain could process it. "What? Why?" Sakura asked him. Sure, Naruto was annoying, and stupid, and a pain. But he'd never done anything to deserving being called a monster. Naruto shuffled his feet awkwardly. "I don't know," he finally muttered out unconvincingly. "It doesn't matter," Toriyami snapped. "Just keep that murderer away from my family." "Hey," Sasuke snarled at him. "You hired shinobi to protect you. That's what we were doing." "Sasuke-kun is right. Surely you had to have known that something like this might happen." Guy tried to cut in diplomatically, hoping to still the angry crowds. "Yes, but that kid, he acted like he didn't even care that he had killed someone." Toriyami argued back, glancing nervously at the boy, like he would attack at any moment. "If I were to grieve about every time I had to kill someone, I could not remain a shinobi. We have to remember that while none of us have the right to take away another's right to live, nor do we have to stand helplessly by as our own lives and our loved ones' lives are threatened. Be sorry when you take a life but do not grieve. You'll never be happy that way." Everyone turned to stare at Naruto, who only shifted the weight of the firewood and blinked in memory. "The old man, the third Hokage, told me that the day after I killed someone for the first time." Naruto turned at that and walked away to set up his tent. "Kakashi-sensei, I thought this was the first time Naruto killed someone," Sakura said to Kakashi softly, trying not to offend Naruto. "No, remember at that time against that Chunin, he said as much." Neji spoke solemnly. "That's right. People like us can't live as Long as we have without killing someone, or something like that is what he said, Tenten murmured. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura questioned to her mentor. I think he was 6 the first time he was forced to kill someone. Kakashi told her. The people around him reeled back in shock, except for Guy, Sasuke idly noticed. I remember how furious the Sandaime was that the Anbu had failed to guard him. He watched with his one eye Naruto's clumsy movements with the frustrating tent. Kakashi just turned his attention back to his comrades. We should all eat and get some rest. With that the conversation was closed. Naruto had been given first watch. First and last watch were the most sought after ones to have, for it meant a less interrupted sleep. The last few nights they'd been given to Sakura and Tenten. But tonight Kakashi had given it to Naruto. Naruto had the feeling that Kakashi knew he wouldn't be sleeping tonight anyway and wasn't expecting Naruto to waken anyone for their turn anyway. Blue-eyed boy sighed as he poked the bright fire with a long stick. He hadn't meant to kill that man, but he'd been angry and scared and his Rasengan was more powerful than he'd expected it to be. Jiraiya would be angry at him. Naruto thought bemusedly. He'd lost control. Naruto turned his head to a shuffling sound coming from the tent Sakura and Tenten shared, only to see a pink head pop out. He didn't speak until she sat down next to him. What are you doing up? He poked the fire again. Well, I couldn't sleep. She shivered a little and Naruto poked the fire a few more times to conjure up a larger flame. I kept replaying the events of the day in my mind and I realized I never thanked you. For what? Naruto asked, still confused by how Sakura was acting today. For what you did. You killed that bandit, Sakura said. Her voice hitching only a little at the word killed. I didn't mean to. It's 'cause I was weak. It was still for a moment before Naruto turned his head around to see Sasuke silently come up on his other side to sit. What are you doing up, Tem? What did you mean? It's 'cause you were weak. Sasuke ignored his questioned jibe. Naruto shrugged as he stared back into the fire. The old man, Ero Sennin, and even Ba-chan have all told me that it's easier to kill someone than to merely stop them. That's why so many people die, they said, because others were too weak to do anything but kill them. I'm weak, so I lost control, and I killed that man even though I didn't mean to. The three sat in silence for a while, listening to the crack of the fire. But, doesn't getting strong mean you'll have to kill more people? Sakura asked, breaking the calm with the question both she and Sasuke wanted to ask. Naruto blinked slowly. I'm going to try to become as strong as I can while killing as few as I can so that I'll be able to protect as many people as possible. It's why I want to be the Hokage. Sakura quirked a smile. Hey, you become Hokage, and I'll become the director at the hospital and we'll be able to help and protect everyone. Me too, Sasuke suddenly said. The others turned to him. I'll lead the Anbu or maybe start up the military police again. And then we can all three protect everyone. But what about your ambition? To avenge your clan? Naruto asked him quietly, not wanting to set the boy off. I'll do that too, eventually, but it's not like my parents can care anymore whether or not they're avenged today or years from now. Sasuke paused. This doesn't change anything, you're still a loser, but everyone else seems to think you can become Hokage someday, so maybe you can. If you do then I need to do something equally impressive. I can't be left behind by the dead last after all. Sasuke smirked at him and Naruto glowered as Sakura laughed. Hidden in the trees above them, Kakashi smiled. His team was finally getting it. 6 days later, they were finally entering Konoha again. Sakura had the world's biggest headache at the time. Lee kept trying to get Neji to fight him. Neji kept trying to goad Naruto into fighting him. Naruto kept accepting before Sasuke would hit him in the head and tell him to stop and Guy kept going on. And on about youth and springtime even though it was not spring. It's nice to be back isn't it? Tenten commented a little dryly, just sick of all the males' antics. Tell me about it. I can't wait to go home, take a shower. And most importantly get away from these boys. Sakura moaned. But first we have to go see Tsunade-sama. Tenten laughed at her in pity for them, wholeheartedly agreeing with the girl. Great. Now I have to listen to Naruto and Tsunade-sama go on and on. Sakura groaned this time, wondering what would happen if she just didn't show up at the Hokage's tower. Cheer up Sakura, it won't take long. Kakashi told her without looking up from his book. Sakura just smirked evilly at the man. She was waiting for the day he ran into a pole while reading that smut. They were quickly ushered into the Hokage's office by some stressed-looking guards. It's about time you all got back. The past 2 days all Hokage-sama has done is asked if you got back yet and threatened us with bodily harm if we didn't tell her the moment you stepped foot into Konoha. One of the guards told Kakashi with a twitch of an eyebrow. Heya ba-chan, Naruto cried as he strode into the room, banging one of the doors into the wall. A desk clock flew out of nowhere and hit him square in the face before he was snatched into a bear hug. Don't call me that, you twerp. Tsunade spoke even as she was holding Naruto a foot off the ground in her arms. Oxygen, Naruto gasped and Tsunade promptly dropped him onto the ground with a thud. I see you all made it back in one piece, Tsunade said with the utmost dignity, and everyone knew that what they had just witnessed was never to be spoken of again. Well, let's get this over with. She moved back to her desk and began shuffling things around. Damn it, where is it? Why does Shizune always have to be off somewhere when I need something? She murmured, now lifting things up off her desk in no order. Both Team 7 and Team Guy sighed lightly. EY all had a feeling that scenes like this would become commonplace in the Hokage's office from then on. Naruto mumbled something that sounded vaguely like incompetent old hags, which the Hokage NK fully did not hear before walking over to a shelf near the doors. Once there he found the proper folder and carried back over to the Hokage's desk. Here, this is it, he told her monotonously. Ah, thank you. You know, maybe you should help me out here sometimes. I don't know what the hell I'm doing and Shizune's always over at the hospital. Tsunade mentioned as she flipped the pages in the folder until she found a blank one. Okay. Guy and Kakashi, I need you to give me your written reports by tomorrow, but until then I just need a rough outline of what occurred. Kakashi and Guy glanced at each other before Kakashi stepped forward and began to narrate what had occurred, glossing over the client's reaction to Naruto having killed someone. He just had this hunch that the fifth would not appreciate one of her favorite people being called a monster. She'd read about it tomorrow anyway, when he was far, far away. And that's all. Kakashi finished dully. I see. What would you say is likelihood that they will hire Konoha again? Tsunade narrowed her eyes. This mission sounded like it had been an unqualified disaster. Well, they probably won't hire our teams again. Kakashi replied blandly. You all need to work on your public relations. Tsunade sighed irritably as she made a note in the file. Naruto, how are you feeling? This was your first mission kill, correct? She knew it was correct. Tsunade had read everything she could find on Naruto the day she'd been instated. Yeah, I guess. Naruto shrugged. I'm okay though, it's not that big of a deal. Naruto finished lamely. I see. Tsunade sighed again. She'd been doing that a lot lately. Well, you are all free to go, but Kakashi and Guy, don't forget that I need those reports. As they all turned to leave, however, she spoke again. Naruto, you stay here. Her voice was hard. Sakura turned back, worried that Naruto was going to get in trouble for something. Looking through the opening of the door right before Kakashi shut it, however, she saw Tsunade wrapping Naruto back into a hug as he hugged her back. Sakura turned back around with a small smile on her face. Things were going to be okay. Omake 1, the ramen eating competition. What started out as a typical Wednesday afternoon training with Kakashi soon devolved into a gathering of the Rookie 9. Asuma had come to speak with Kakashi about something, dragging his team behind him. Not that Ino minded, as she got to see Sasuke-kun, and then Kurenai had come to speak with Asuma, bringing her team along as well. Kakashi quickly gave up trainin'. After Ino attempted to glomp Sasuke and Sakura screamed at her for messing with her teammate. Naruto had been laughing at the look on Sasuke's face, and Sasuke was trying desperately to get Ino off him. Shikamaru had wandered over to the shade under a tree with a mumbled, troublesome, under his breath, and Choji followed him smiling and munching on chips. When Kiba arrived, he began mocking Naruto as Hinata timidly muttered a hello. Shino also wandering over to the tree, not so much for the shade but for the caterpillar climbing on it. Somehow, and Sakura still isn't quite sure how it happened, they all, including the sensei, ended up at Ichiraku Ramen. Sakura just knew Naruto was somehow involved. So, Forehead girl, how's training? Ino turned to Sakura after Sasuke had made it abundant why clear that he was going to ignore the entire populace of Ichirakus. None of your business Ino pig, Sakura told her blandly. The two instantly engaged in a staring contest. Oi, how about some more ramen? Naruto called out, waving a bowl around. Coming right up, miso pork okay. Old man Ichiraku said with a smile. Naruto was his favorite customer after all. Yeah, me as well, and make it 2 bowls. Choji added in. Suddenly a spark seemed to fly between Naruto and Choji. Hey, give me 3 more bowls. Naruto cried. 4, 5, 10, 20. Everyone had turned around to stare at the two. Ha ha ha. Naruto chuckled darkly. I challenge you to a ramen eating contest. I accept. Choji agreed equally as loudly. May the best man win. Naruto said as the two shook hands. The ramen vendor was in heaven just thinking about the profits this would bring him. The members of Team 7 and Team 10 were all shaking their heads in exasperation as Team 8 looked on in bewilderment. Itadakimasu. A joint cry rang out as the two competitors began eating. 3 hours later, as Team 7 supported the now overly stuffed and swirly-eyed Naruto and Team 10 supported the bloated and moaning Choji. And Team 8 simply sat open-mouthed and aghast at what they'd seen. The competition was called a tie at 57 bowls each. The ramen vendor was planning his next vacation. Omake 2. Naruto helps the Hokage. A week after returning from his joint mission with Team Guy, Naruto found out that Tsunade was indeed serious about having Naruto help her in the Hokage's office. Tsunade had appeared at his apartment that morning and dragged him off to the tower, despite his protests that he had to train with Ero Sennin. Jiraiya can wait. Think of this as training for when you become Hokage. She told him as she deposited him in one of the chairs in her office. Already Kage Bush and Tsunades were hard at work filling out various forms and whatnot. After the training for Hokage comment, Naruto was more than willing to help Tsunade. Within an hour, they had tamed the haphazard mountains of paperwork into neat orderly stacks, while the clones busily set to the completion of uncompleted forms. Tsunade was ecstatic to realize that much of the papers floating around were simple notices and memos of things going on in the village and she didn't have to actually read them. Anything on blue paper can just be tossed. If it's white you should get around to it within a week. Yellow means that it should be looked at before 2 days are over. Red means it's urgent and should be attended to first. Naruto explained calmly. Wait, I got a whole stack of those red ones. They're urgent. Tsunade's eyes widened. Yes, didn't one of the chunin assistants explain this all to you? Naruto began, shuffling around various stacks looking for the red notices. No, I fired most of them for being idiots the first day. Mostly Shizune has just been helping me. Tsunade too began searching around, though less orderly than Naruto as she was just flinging papers around wildly. Naruto cursed loudly. Another hour and they had found the stack and dealt with most of it. It was 8 in the morning by this point and time for teams and ninjas to head in for mission assignments. Tsunade dispelled her 2 clones before settling herself behind her desk. Naruto was still running around in the background organizing forms. The first team to come in was Team 10. They all looked at Naruto oddly. What are you doing here, Dobi? Kiba said, voicing the unspoken question. What does it look like I'm doing, dog breath? I'm organizing things around here since Ba-chan's incapable. The desk clock suddenly appeared out of nowhere and struck him in the side of his head. Watch it twerp. Tsunade snapped at him. She turned back to Team 10. Now, what can I do for you? She said sweetly while smiling brightly at them. We would like a C-rank mission. Kurenai told her, feeling uncomfortable in the attention of that smile. Right, Naruto. C-rank. Tsunade barked. Naruto moved to a stack of files against the far wall and looked briefly at the tabs. Finding one appropriate for a genin team, he snatched it deftly out of the stack. Here. Naruto sent it flying expertly across the room into Tsunade's hand. Well, let's see then, Tsunade murmured, opening the folder. 3 hours later and teams had stopped coming in for missions. Time for lunch, Tsunade called cheerfully as she stretched in her seat. Reaching down, she pulled a large jug of sake out of her desk. Sake for lunch. Perfect. She took a swig. You call that lunch? Naruto stared at her incredulously. What do you think constitutes lunch? Tsunade gave him the stink eye. What does constitutes mean? Naruto asked her blankly. Tsunade sighed and rubbed her temples. What do you think makes up a good lunch? Ramen, of course. Tsunade mumbled as she put away the bottle. Well, let's go get some ramen then, but we need to come right back. Naruto was already out the door. After lunch, they went back to the office. Tsunade made a couple of clones and she and her doubles started filling out whatever paperwork Naruto handed them. Naruto, meanwhile, was disposing of outdated paperwork and piling everything else in stacks according to importance and subject. It was dusty work and Naruto was soon covered in grime. Don't think this place has been cleaned out since the Shodai. Naruto grumbled as he found a stack of halfway completed forms dating back 50 years. Just keep cleaning. I'll give you C rank mission pay if you can get this place organized. Tsunade told him. A few more hours later and Naruto had lost track of time completely. Tsunade was in rapture. They had completed most of the backlogged paperwork. Kei in the office was looking better than ever. Tsunade was almost at the point of giving Naruto A rank pay. A small knock sounded at the door and Tsunade hastily dispelled her clones before the door opened. It was Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke. Ah, I thought so. Kakashi said. Naruto looked over his shoulder from his place at a bookshelf. Kakashi-sensei, why are you here? Naruto asked, shoving another bound volume onto the shelf. Naruto, you forgot about team training, didn't you? Kakashi told him with a sigh. What time is it? Naruto cried, dropping another volume onto the floor. It's 5. Sakura told him. Sorry. He was here helping me. Tsunade laughed joyously. Look at this place. It's so clean and I got so much paperwork done. She spread her arms out to gesture around the room. That's okay, Hokage-sama. Kakashi said. We'll just go now. Naruto can help you for as long as you want. Great. Tsunade smiled. Only Naruto noticed it looked slightly evil. A few more hours later, Naruto finally crawled into bed. Exhausted. That was tougher than even the Tora the Cat mission. The end. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.